Okay, well, good afternoon, all the members of the press. I'm pleased to be able to have a discussion with you. As I said before, sometimes I begin with a statement which I respond to. Other times I'm open to a discussion. I think this is one of the times when we can just have a discussion. We made some statements yesterday and the day before, and so we don't have enough to talk about, I think. So I'm open to a discussion.
Good afternoon, Zan Lewis from ZBV Radio. I feel a good way to start this press conference before going into what I believe why we are here. How do you feel today, sir, compared to last night and yesterday? How do you feel today in connection with what you would have gone through? How is Dr. Smith today as like last night and yesterday and for the last 2 days?
Well, let me put it this way. I am relieved that my colleagues have all agreed, or most of them, agreed to do something which is right, particularly with this territory, to be able to agree to the setting up this agency, agree to the guarantee which the United Kingdom government is offering us, because we all know the status of the state of the country that we're in right now. We all know the devastation that has occurred since hurricanes, and we all know because of that, the effect that has had on the economy, and the fact that we are going to be about $50 million down as far as this year's budget is concerned. And that is those I think which are, very pertinent and which we have to do something about if we're going to do what is our job, what is our responsibility, just looking after the people of this country.
I believe Premier would have learned lessons running up to this process to where you are today. One of the lessons or what you have learned also is your backbenchers are joining with the opposition to sign a letter to send against you that was sent to you stating that they are not in favor of the agency. And to round it off, at the end of it all, one of your backbenchers still voted no, despite all the work that was done in the committee stage to make some amendments while some others changed their mind. This one, Melvin Michigan chose not to. How do you see all of this whole entire scenario? First of all, the letter joining with the opposition to send to you that they're not in favor, and still one of your colleagues, still holding out and saying no.
Well, I was surprised that they decided to join with the opposition at that point to oppose. But also, I believe that it is a responsibility of all members who come to the House to think carefully about whatever bill is before them and be able to make their contributions when it comes to presentations in the House of Assembly. However, I also believe that the enormity of the situation which we face as a territory is open for all to see. And I think we have a responsibility to do what is right for the people of this country.
Let me just run. So you're saying the second district representative didn't do what is right for the benefit of the people?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that everybody has a right to express their views about what's contained in any legislature. As a matter of fact, when we take a bill to the House, everybody has the opportunity to make their views known as to what is in the legislation. And whether it's members of the opposition or members of the government. And very often, those views are very constructive about what needs to be improved or what needs to be changed in the legislation. And that is important, and that is why we have the discussion, the discourse, so that in the end we should end up having a bill which is right for the country.
Premier Kathy Richards, JTV News, it's always a pleasure speaking with you on matters of country. One of the major issues that you were facing in this whole process, as Zan alluded to, is that document, the 5-page document which members of the House of Assembly kept saying they were only privy to 2 pages, and you had given the reasons, 3 pages, and you have given reasons in the House of Assembly why it was not in your sphere to release. So what was the breaking point that resulted in you releasing all 5 pages, if that's the accurate figure?
The reality is this. As a Premier, I get correspondence daily from heads of states from in the Caribbean, from other parts in the world, exchange of letters between myself and the ministers of government in the UK, right? And it is not, and what I do is I share with members what is important for whatever the discussion happens to be. It is not practical to share every one of the single letters that I get on a regular basis, because most of them are not pertinent to whatever discussions. It is also not right, in my opinion, unless it is necessary, to share with everybody else the letters I get, which may be, some which may be confidential between myself and other heads of states, etc., right? However, in this particular case, I shared the contents, which basically the meat, as I call it, meat of the letter, with members when I was asked a few months ago, when they came to discussing the agency and the guarantee, right? However, I did not share the opening part of the letter, which was essentially the salutation, etc., in the letter. And I decided after the continued discussions, and particularly after it was actually read out by the member for the 3rd District. And so after all that happened, after this continuous suggestion that I was keeping back information from the members of the House for their discussions, and I had that discussion with my counterpart in the UK, with whom I was exchanging the information. And then he said, okay, I will read the letter out for the committee to understand, to hear what it was. And if you heard it, you will notice that there was very little in that first 2 pages that would have made any difference to the discussions.
Okay, and Premier, most of the persons in the legislature who were not very much in support of this framework as it was presented in the initial stage were more for local borrowing. What we have not heard yet is any explanation what are the disadvantages to borrowing from like Social Security and whichever local arms they are for this recovery money. Could you give some explanation to that?
A couple of things. First of all, we'll be speaking about a significant quantum of money. Maybe, as it's indicated, the British government said a guarantee up to £300 million. I'm not saying that we'll use all that. I'm saying that's the amount that they will guarantee. We may use 100 million or 200 million, I don't know, I can't tell at this point. But whatever we do, we'll be using this money incrementally. So we borrow what we need for this time, and as time goes on, if we need more, we'll continue to borrow. But the idea is that the guarantee will cover the entire amount, so that we can just have access to it, right? That's the first thing. And then the question about how else would you have access to this kind of money? If we were not with the guarantee, we can have access to monies internationally, monies which can be borrowed at the UK rates. So whereas when on our own, even borrowing locally, we may have to pay maybe 3.5, 3.84%, maybe more, up to 5% on monies we borrow. Using UK rates, we can borrow maybe 1% or even less. This is significant. And the Minister of Communications actually pointed out how significant this could be over the long term when he spoke just 2 days ago. When it comes to borrowing from Social Security, my brother was the first director of Social Security, and he was, one of his things was, let us guard this money. It is the people's money for when they come to retirement. And so it is not something that you get into without, willy-nilly. We must, it is possible that we are able to, and we do borrow from time to time, smaller quantities. And in fact, the Social Security Board has a policy that can invest so much into the local community. But when it comes to large sums, we have to be much, much more careful. Apart from the fact that having access to or using the Social Security Board, which is the people's money, in an economy which is still struggling, the fact also remains that the Social Security Board will not lend at below 1%. The Social Security Board is going to lend at the usual rates, 3 point, or whatever that rate would be. Right? So there are several factors where it is more advantageous to have the guarantee, the ability to get the UK rates, and the ability to have up to a guarantee of up to a certain amount of money to be able to draw upon.
Okay, so Premier, we have jumped one hurdle. People are desperate now to see this territory start bouncing back at a higher level. Can you explain to us from here where to? And at what stage will you be able to say, okay, this is the amount that we're going to borrow from with the guarantee within what frame of time?
As I said just now, I won't be able to say what is the total borrowing that we need, because the monies that we expect to come into the agency for the recovery comes from several other sources as well. We expect monies to come from individual donors or companies who may wish to donate to the rebuild of the BVI, or even the governments. So it depends on exactly what is gotten in terms of donation, what is gotten in terms of grants, what is gotten in terms of insurance. For example, this building was insured, right? So there are these other sources which we must utilize. We also have to look at what will happen once the economy of the BVI begins to recover, right? So once it starts to recover, then we'll have more income coming from that source to the government to be able to help to defray costs of the recovery as well. So there are many other sources where monies will come from, which will determine how much we borrow in the long term.
Okay, but could you say how soon this process is likely to start?
Right now, we've completed our part of the discussions on the guarantee. Now it's the bill will go to the governor for assent. Of course, he'll have to, and then after that is complete, then we go into the process of completing the establishment of the agency and then accessing the guarantee, having had discussions with lending institutions, and then calling in on the guarantee.
Premier Malika McPherson, going back to Cathy from the islands, I'm sorry, Cathy's initial question about the document that actually had to become public, the confidential document that you did say was between yourself and the UK official. The member for the Charter, the Honourable Julian Fraser, did state that the document was not stolen. He said that there were other persons who had access to that document, and therefore I guess we can do the maths. It also raises a question that some of your predecessors have had and mentioned about leakage. Are you concerned, and do you think that this is a prime example? And I do recall that there were some measures put in place. How do you tie all of this up?
When I was speaking yesterday, I spoke about Freedom Information Bill. That is one thing which I think we should do, because really, in my opinion, we have freedom of information here in BVI. Because we do. Even if I don't put a document out, it gets out anyhow. That's freedom of information.
In a wrong way.
So the Freedom of Information Bill is going to be important, because apart from the fact that information will be free, so to speak, there also require provisions in any Freedom of Information Act that certain types of information should be held for varying periods of time before it's released to the public. And those are usually information that has to do with national security measures. Right? And so I think it's important for us to get that. And that is one of the acts or bills that will be taken out as soon as possible.
Premier, just to follow up on what you just said related to the freedom of information, Honorable Fraser did counter that point somewhat, where, and I'm sure you recall him saying that the people of the BVI are somewhat at a disadvantage because persons in the UK could have had access to this document, whereas basically we might not have known about it had he not done what he did. And so therefore you're saying that that might not have been the case because the Freedom of Information Act might have put a stay on when this document could have been released. Is that what you're saying, sir, that it is not exactly true?
There are two things. First of all, people in the UK or other places would have access to information, but there's a process to get it. They'd apply for it and ask for it and get information. I mean, there are people in the community, right? In the same way, that could be done here. But I'm also saying that it is in place in most communities, larger communities, in Freedom of Information Act, which provides for how information is obtained. It gives a process for in which you go to get information you wish to have, and also outlines what information should be released.
And the second point on that, we've talked about the freedom of information many times at forums like this, and you're saying soon. Can we then say 2018, or that is way too soon?
Well, certainly I expect to introduce it in 2018.
Davian Smith, BVN News. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you. Just want to touch on those 5 documents again. I'm just curious to know, you said in the House of Assembly, you just said the document that the 2 pages that weren't released were effectively nothing, salutations. But in the House of Assembly, you also described them as confidential.
No, the entire document I was speaking about at that point.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. All right. On another note, I want to take us in terms of hurricane recovery, the upcoming season, and I understand that persons are now out of the shelter at the multipurpose complex. Could you say if that's true?
I actually cannot confirm that to you right now. It may be true, but I haven't had an update on that today, certainly. But I will find out as soon as I leave here. But I know that there were plans to have them relocated, and I hope it's true. But I'll be confirming that as soon as I leave this room.
Premier, will it be correct to say or assume that the BVI is out of the woods in terms of getting that £300 million? The reason why I ask, amendments are made in the House of Assembly. The bill now has to go to the governor to ascend. Correct. Right. If the governor chooses not to ascend the bill at this point, what happens? And if he assents to it, it has to go to the UK. Are we correct?
No.
Or let me change that. Suppose the UK is not satisfied with the amendments made to the bill now in committee stage, to which members have agreed to, and they have requested, I will not agree with this, there need to be certain changes here. What happens? It comes back to you for more negotiations? What happens from there?
Yes, if the governor isn't prepared to consent, then he'll refer it back to me, and we'll look at it again. But I just want to say this, that we've been in constant discussions on the bill with officials in the UK as to make sure that they understand what we were doing and where we were going and the amendments we were making.
So it'd be correct to assume that the UK is aware of the final document that was approved by the House. They are aware of it?
No.
They're not aware of it?
I'm saying we were concerned with discussions with them during the development. For example, one of the things that was said is that we were in touch with them again about how the bill plays with the protocols for effective financial management, right? And I did say that that was agreed that that would be looked at to accommodate the guarantee. And as the leader of the opposition made clear in the statement, there was an email which supported that statement.
What I'm concerned about, Premier, is this document to which members now say yes to, right? If the UK chooses to say that I'm not in agreement with what was agreed to by the legislature here, the House of Assembly, it will then, those changes again will have to be made to those amendments to make sure that the UK is happy.
If they do not consent, then it will return to me. I'll have to take it back to Cabinet, back to the House of Assembly, and we look at have another look at the legislation.
So it's a wrong process. Suppose they say no to what the UK say no to them.
Well, it is a process.
Sir, do you imagine the governor would approve of the document in its current form, the amendments and all?
I think the document that in the completed form was a good document. And I think it's a document which should serve us well and be able to help us to access the guarantee and the money that we need to rebuild the country.
So that's a yes, you think he'll accept it as it is with the amendments?
I cannot tell you what he will do or what he won't do. I can just tell you that what we have completed, the document we completed, is a good document. It looked at all the issues. It's a good document, and I think it would serve us well to accessing the guarantee and the money that we need.
Sir, you were in the discussions. So sorry, colleagues. You were in the discussions, the in-camera discussions, and why do you imagine the Honourable Minister for the 2nd District, Honourable Mitch Turnbull, opted not to vote yes, even with those amendments?
As I said, it is the right of any elected person in the House during the time when we are discussing the bill. And in fact, it is expected that they look at the bill and offer their comments, right? And despite that, of course, as a government, I would have expected greater support from my colleagues, all my colleagues, right? Which most of them did in the end as we looked at and did some changes, right? But it is still within the right of the individual to make comments as they see fit. Right? The second district is an important district to the BVI. It's one of the destination, one of the major tourism destinations, and that is one. And when you look at what we've been doing, that the loans we got from CDB, for example, I'll tell you, future loans, we'll be accessing monies, consumer monies, to put into that district to help to development of that district, because it's important to the district, to the people of the district, and to the entire territory.
Yes, Premier, my name is Claire Shevchik. I'm with the BVI Beacon. I'm a new face here, so thank you for having me here today. Has government agreed to take on no new non-guaranteed debt without prior UK approval, as mentioned in the UK high-level framework document?
The short answer is that all loans that we get must be approved by the United Kingdom. This has always been the case. This is not any new, not a new situation.
Okay. Oh, I just had one follow-up. Thanks. Has government actively chosen not to accept any of the conditions described in the UK's high-level framework document?
No, I would not say that. We've had discussions on all the items. We've agreed on the agency. This was much of the discussion, and many of the other things in the document. About items which are already in progress, I think which you know about. For example, one of the things in the items in the document was the question of audited accounts. Now we know that the audited accounts is something that's important and should be done, We also have discussed it on several occasions, why they were, where we are with those, and that we are working steadily and steadfastly towards getting those up to date. Yeah. We know, for example, yeah, go on. Yeah.
Go ahead, William Sorvino. Just want to know, will you be reshuffling your cabinet, especially since the persons are saying they are not fit for Minister of Finance? And will you be calling election, early election?
The interesting question. But we are now just going to continue. In fact, I'm meeting with the members of the government and the House today to discuss matters pertaining to the bill. So the work of government will go on, must go on.
Premier, in the House of Assembly and otherwise, we are hearing that a key hand in coining that document that had this entire brouhaha surrounding it and this intense debate had a lot to do with the former governor, who it's expressed that would not have had that much confidence in our premier to handle the finances of the territory. Is there any truth to this? Do you know what is former Governor Duncan's position right now in the UK, and is he in any way part and parcel with the structuring of this document or anything at all to do with the BVI?
That I cannot say. Whether he had a hand in the letters or discussions surrounding the guarantee. But what I can say is there's no indication, certainly to me, from Governor Duncan that he had any lack of support for my position as Premier and Minister of Finance.
Okay. Do you know that if it's possible or if it's likely that Duncan is going to be one of the two representatives that the UK government would have on that board?
That I would not be able to tell you either. I cannot say that.
Okay.
Premier, you had mentioned if this bill was not passed, there would have been serious repercussions in terms of steps would have had to be taken, particularly maybe with the public service. There might be cuts, whatever. Now, with the passage of this bill, what is the likelihood, what can now happen to civil servants? Can civil servants breathe a sigh of relief? Yeah, because there have been claims that they have been receiving notices of possible cuts in the civil service. With the passage of this bill, what does this tell civil servants and their positions?
What I say that if we do not get the loans that we require over the period over some time, then we'll not be able to continue the recovery and development of the BVI. If the bill, for example, was not assented to today, in the short term, and the bill then was referred and we looked at it again, and so that process, would be ongoing. If there's no guarantee and no loans, then the issue would have to look at our economy and see what we need to do. Because certainly if we are going to be $50 million short for this year, then we'll have to look and see what we can afford to do without that $50 million.
And that the possibility that could have been cut to the civil service is possible?
It is possible.
So now it's no longer possible?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we've gone through a process. We've looked at the bill that has to do with the guarantee, has to do with setup of the agency. We're satisfied that it's a good bill, and we expected that the governor will also look at it, from our point of view, and that we'll be able to move on.
I'm just basically going to ask you to just give your opinion on what the people are saying. It's been an intense debate, and as Zan alluded to, we saw some unique. Well, it's unique in the sense that usually we have persons in government holding one head, usually, but this time we saw some persons basically staying true to their own feelings and opinions. Some are saying that that was a very good sign for democracy here in the territory, but others are saying that it might indicate that there's a fracture. What do you say as leader of the territory and as head of leader of government business?
What I would say, it is not unusual for members of a particular party to vote against something that is presented by the party. And this is universal. This is why whenever there's a vote to be taken in any country, like in the UK, for example, some members of the government might vote against the bill and some would. And this happens whether it's in the UK, whether it's in America. And this is why before a bill is taken in the House, the particular parties or the whip of those parties will go around sort of encouraging, explaining, and making sure that there's as much support as possible. So it's not unusual for that to happen. In fact, it's happened here on occasion as well. So it's not something that is, in fact, it's common. That is, that's normal democratic practice.
Zan went there first with the public service and the possibility of pay cuts. One thing has been floating around, and I cannot recall seeing any official document that says that that is true, is that the staff at Port Authority has been having pay cuts since the passage of Hurricane Irma. They have been operating on less than what they used to have before. If this is true, could you tell us why this is, and could you explain why would Port Authority, if it's true, be the ones to be made to subject themselves to this, when in previous press conference it has been said that that is one sector that has been booming even more than double than it used to be prior to Hurricane Irma. So why the arm that is now bringing in much more money are the ones who are having pay cuts, if it is true?
Well, I cannot confirm that that is true. I'll have to check with the ministry responsible as soon as this meeting is over, but I cannot confirm.
So there was no directives from your level that any arm be made to suffer pay cuts?
No.
So following up on the same matter of the cuts, one of the points that was made is that some layoff might be possible through the privatization route, which was mentioned in the consultation document. Premier, do you think that that is likely? It was actually mentioned during the debate.
Yeah. What happens is that all governments must look at how they provide services to the country. Right? It is a common saying that the private industry, so to speak, are more efficient in providing services. And so there's an appetite in some places to privatize some services. This is why, for example, here in the BVI, we've created several statutory bodies, quasi-private, so to speak, like the BVI Electricity Corporation, the Financial Services Commission. And they're not private or the private, they run like private institutions, and they run very efficiently. There are areas where we are creating private-public partnerships, some private, some public. And one of the things that we're considering, for example, is the whole question of the extension of the airport. I mean, we all agree that we need an airport, but we all agree also that it would be better to do it in that way, using a public-private partnership, because it's more efficient and get what we need for the people of this country without overexposing, so to speak, the government. We all agree that it is okay also to look at privatization where we think it's important or would be efficient. For example, we've had discussions on a few occasions, not formal discussion, about the possibility of privatizing the fisheries. Because, and that could be for several reasons, maybe more efficiency, maybe because we feel with a fisheries corporation where all the fishermen are involved, it might make for more efficiencies and more as far as the fishermen are concerned. So the answer to privatization is not as straightforward as that. And it has several different components, as I just described.
Just to follow up then still, since there's not going to be any cuts as far as you can see, and nobody is trying to use privatization as a way to act, what then do you think it means when it says making the public service leaner? Because that's the whole thing that has everybody concerned, that it might mean some trimming. How do you respond? How do you explain, please?
The transformation, so to speak, of the public service, the whole intent really is to make it more efficient. So you could provide better services to the community, provide services more efficiently and readily to the community, whether it's a BVI community or whether it's to the community of persons who wish to engage with BVI, whether investment or other methods. You know?
Sir, in a statement in the House of Assembly, a previous House of Assembly sitting, you stated that persons who got laid off but had new job offers wouldn't be made to leave the territory and for their new work permit to process and so they could return. But however, the Chief Immigration Officer, Mr. Ian Penn, seems to be saying something differently. So I was hoping to get some clarification on it. Are these persons being made to leave or not?
What we're doing is reviewing the legislation and providing what we call sunset legislation to make provision for this and many other different activities because of where we are at the moment, because of the fact that we are in a restructuring, rebuilding phase, and we need as much help as possible. And so we're reviewing those things to provide for many such things such as that. Yeah.
Premier, okay, follow up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a yes or a no, because are they being made to leave? Because several persons I can name have been made to leave, even though they've had offers, even after you've made that statement. So I'm wondering what's the disparity between yourself and the Chief Immigration Officer?
There are things in process, right?
Uh-huh.
But sometimes there are laws which has to be abided by, right? And even though I say, okay, we want to have this done, we have to provide the backup. If there's a law that suggests otherwise, then the law has to be looked at. And so we're working with that process.
Premier,
Okay, we have time for just 2 more questions.
Premier, during the debate in the House, even by members of your government, they claim that there are persons on the ground, right? Persons from the UK who are entering like board meetings uninvited, being seen certain areas within the Virgin Islands, the backbencher and Archibald Christian, another person being mentioned of it. Are there persons on the ground here monitoring what government is doing? If there are persons, how they got it? They were sent, were they invited, and what are they doing? First of all, is it true, and what are they doing here?
2 things. They are not persons monitoring what government is doing. They are persons who are here in technical assistance of one sort or the other. For example, yesterday I met with the Rocky Mountain Group, who are here giving assistance to the Ministry of Communication, Ministry of Natural Resources, and the BVI Electricity Corporation in forming policies for the continued development of the energy sector. Talking about renewals and resilience and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But they are here. The various ministries have been working. They are working with the various ministries to develop these policies, how we can move forward and make better use of resources.
They were told they were also at the college. Were they sent here, or were they invited to come by the various ministries, or were they sent by the UK? How they got here?
There are many people offer themselves, right? Many organizations offer assistance to the BVI. For example, There's a gentleman called Kenny Chesney, an American, and he has offered assistance to the BVI, particularly to Jocelyn Dyke. And many of the people who work for him have been here working with the ministries, particularly Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health, in helping to rebuild some structures in Jocelyn Dyke. And this applies in Jocelyn Dyke, in Virgin Gorda, and Tortola.
So there's no secret about it. There's no secret.
Well, when you say there's no secret, it's like this. Yeah? If someone comes in to work with the Ministry of Education, say, on a particular project, well, the ministry may know at that particular time, unless someone says that Mr. John Brown is working with the Ministry of Education and Jocelyn Dyke, to everybody, then everybody would not know. And so therefore some people, those are people who have not been informed, when they see people who they have not recognized, okay, it may be interpreted that they're here without invitation.
Okay, just one more question.
Premier, what's the status with Disney's cruise line and its relationship with the territory?
We have a good relationship with Disney Cruise Line, as was determined after in fact, even before the cruise pier was built, we developed this relationship. And what Disney Cruise Line is, as you said, they haven't returned so far as yet, but they're looking very much to return, to continue this relationship, continue to bring in their visitors to the BVI, because it was recognized that BVI is one of the more important destinations for Disney now in the Caribbean. But what they also say, it is important for the BVI to be at a certain standard. For example, we want to make sure that our beaches are clean, they're safe. We don't want to have beaches that there are maybe galvanized other things in the waters or whatnot. We want to make sure that the roads are safe and comfortable. So these are the things that the infrastructure has to be good. So these are things that we're working on to put in place so that all our visitors, whether they come from Disney or Norwegian or the overnight visitors or the day trippers, will, when they come to BVI, enjoy the stay and wish to come back again.
We have others that have returned and seem to be meshing in and are quite comfortable with the status of things developing. What is that key factor that is keeping Disney away so long?
Just as I explained to you a few minutes ago, they have a high standard, and I want to make sure that when they come and the visitors experience it, that they will be able to enjoy the experience, and so that Disney will be able to keep up its reputation as a cruise line, which carry people to destinations, so they can have an enjoyable time. They can enjoy the experience.
How soon will we get to that stage?
I wish we could get to it tomorrow, right? But that's a matter that's being dealt with the Ministry of Communications, and they're working assiduously to have everything in place for the return.
Okay, Premier.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Good.
Any closing?
No, well, I just want to thank you for coming, and I know it's good to have discussion and discourse with the press from time to time. I know it's not always possible to provide all the answers, especially if I'm not aware, for example, like how many people have been removed from the multi-sports complex, because they have not been brought up to date. But I can get those answers for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah.